Please raise your right hand and repeat after me.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
Donald Trump has stormed back into the United Nations in 2025 with a swagger that no longer draws laughter but chills. Gone is the 2018 moment when delegates chuckled at his boasts.
America's so true. Didn't expect that reaction, but that's okay.
Now they lean forward, wary, calculating, bracing. In his second term, the America First president is not merely withdrawing. He's wielding America's wallet like a weapon. Over $3 billion in unpaid dues, historic cuts to peacekeeping and humanitarian programs, and a shuttered USAID send one message: comply or go broke. World leaders know flattery won't work and that their budgets may collapse if Washington turns the tap. Is Trump's mission to slash US funding, especially at the UN, a revolution in global power or a slow-motion demolition of multilateralism? Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. We've all had our moments in childhood where our parents would threaten to lessen or withdraw our pocket money in order to force us to listen to them. This is exactly how Trump has been treating the United Nations, like a disobedient child.
I didn't think of it at the time because I was too busy working to save millions of lives. That is the saving and stopping of these wars. But later I realized that the United Nations wasn't there for us. They weren't there. I thought of it really after the fact, not during these negotiations, which were not easy. That being the case, what is the purpose of the United Nations? The UN has such tremendous potential. I've always said it. It has such tremendous potential, but it's not even coming close to living up to that potential. For the most part, at least for now, all they seem to do is write a really strongly worded letter and then never follow that letter up. It's empty words, and empty words don't solve war. The only thing that solves war and wars is action.
Since January 2025, Trump has frozen nearly every foreign aid disbursement, dismantled USAID, and invoked the first pocket recession in 50 years to cancel $5 billion Congress had approved for international programs. This isn't routine belt tightening, it's an audacious test of how far a US president can go in bypassing lawmakers to punish or pressure global institutions. The UN's budget is already down 15% for 2026. Agencies are merging and jobs are being slashed. Allies from Europe to Africa whisper about contingency plans. Will this strategy bend the UN to America's will or push the world body into China and Russia's arms instead? Trump's 2025 return to the General Assembly is a study in contrasts. Leaders once rolled their eyes.
In less than 2 years, my administration has accomplished more than almost any administration in the history of our country. America's so true. Didn't expect that reaction, but that's okay.
Today they offer golf outings, Nobel nominations, and public endorsements just to stay in his good graces. Yet the smiles hide a growing unease. With many ambassadorships still vacant and National Security Council channels bypassed, diplomacy is more personalized, more unpredictable, and more transactional. Trump touts having ended 7 wars and sells himself as a peace broker.
Of President Trump, and some of them are right there in the fake news, but they said that nobody's done what we've done in 7 months, a little more than 7 months. When you think of it, we stopped 7 wars. And the war that I thought was going to be the easiest is probably the most difficult. That's the Ukraine and Russia. I thought that would be easier, the relationship with President Putin, all of that. It didn't matter. It's ended up being probably the most difficult. But we stopped wars. One was going on for 31 years. They said it was unstoppable. I got it done in about 2 hours. Another one, 35 years, and another one, 37 years. And we got them all done. But we got 7 of them done. We ended up stopping the potential nuclear disaster in Iran with, I think, one of the greatest military.
But critics see coercion, not conciliation. The United States, historically UN's indispensable funder, is now its biggest delinquent. That delinquency has become Trump's leverage. Numbers tell the story. Mid-2025, an extra $5 billion in foreign aid eliminated. Earlier, $9 billion clawed back. August 29th, first pocket recession since 1977 cancels billions from USAID's development accounts. Programs on poverty reduction, climate and inclusion wiped off the ledger. September 13th, funding suspended for flagship health initiatives, triggering warnings of immediate harm to patients worldwide. September 22nd, 23rd, Trump arrives at the UNGA with the US already $3 billion behind on dues and an unprecedented 15% cut baked into the UN's 2026 budget. The message is clear. Multilateralism will live or die on America's terms. The fallout is brutal. Northern Nigeria reports malnourished children dying as therapeutic food deliveries stall.
What we are looking at is 31 million people who are food insecure in Nigeria. And that's the highest absolute number of people food insecure in the world. When you're looking at acutely malnourished children, it's estimated to be around 15 million children. Here in the northeast of Nigeria, what we are looking at is roughly 1 million children who are severely, acutely malnourished this year. And hundreds of thousands of these children could potentially die if they do not get the assistance that they need.
Doctors Without Borders and Save the Children warn of cascading shortages from Somalia to South Sudan. Programs for emergency shelters, clean water and healthcare are hollowed out. The UN, forced into its deepest cuts ever, merges agencies and plans a 19% staff reduction. The US once used aid as soft power. Trump has turned the spigot into a trigger. Every withheld dollar signals a demand. Align with Washington's priorities or face the consequences. What alarms lawmakers in both parties is not just the scale but the method. Pocket recession, a dusty mechanism unused for half a century, lets Trump suspend funds late in the fiscal year until they expire, sidestepping the appropriations power. Critics call it an unlawful overreach. Trump calls it efficiency. Courts have blocked some freezes but left the door open for his restructuring of US aid and foreign aid. The result is a test case in presidential control over global spending, one that could reshape how future administrations treat Congress's purse strings. Trump's style at the UN mirrors his domestic politics: announce big, finalize later, keep opponents off balance. It has produced unexpected openings. Talks between Armenia and Azerbaijan, between Congo and Rwanda, even a tentative thaw with Turkey, but also glaring failures. From Ukraine to Gaza, European capitals feel the squeeze of tariffs and security demands. India rethinks its reliance on Washington. Trump's stance on territorial expansion from Greenland to the Panama Canal and direct strikes on Iranian nuclear sites and Venezuelan drug boats add to the alarm. Allies fear extrajudicial moves. Adversaries wonder where the red lines are. Nothing illustrates Trump's leverage strategy more starkly than Gaza. By cutting UN funding while backing Israel and rejecting recognition of a Palestinian state, he signals that aid and cooperation will flow only if outcomes suit Washington and its closest ally. Over 140 nations have recognized Palestine. Trump doubles down on opposition. His team floats post-war stabilization ideas, Arab troops replacing Israeli forces, but makes clear US cooperation hinges on favorable terms. This isn't mere policy preference. It's a funding chokehold used as a negotiating tool in one of the world's hottest conflicts. Trump's funding cuts don't stop at the UN's main budget. He's already withdrawn from the World Health Organization and the UN Human Rights Council, slashing America's footprint in agencies once central to global coordination on pandemics, rights, and development. A 180-day review now hangs over every US membership in international organizations. For decades, US leaders argue that paying more bought influence. Trump argues that paying less buys obedience. The UN Charter warns chronic non-payers can lose their vote, yet even that threat seems part of Trump's calculus. Inside the UN's marble corridors, the mood is none of this is entertaining anymore. Bilaterals are organized on the fly. Trade and security deals are dangled as carrots. Funding cuts wielded as sticks. Diplomats used to protocol now scramble to decode personal whims. The result is a UN session unlikely any in memory, less a forum for collective action than a stage for America's unilateral script. The irony is stark. Just as wars in Gaza and Ukraine demand leadership and resources, the UN faces its worst cash crunch in decades. A 15% budget cut, 19% job loss, merged agencies. These aren't trims but amputations. If the US keeps withholding payments, it could lose its vote under UN rules. Yet Trump seems unfazed, perhaps even intrigued by that prospect. Every move fits the same pattern. Slash contributions, retreat from multilateral bodies, redefine foreign policy around hard power and transactional deals. USAID, a Cold War-era pillar of soft power, is effectively shuttered. Public broadcasting abroad and human rights investigations tied to the UN are dismantled. Trump even rebrands the Department of Defense as the Department of War, signaling a preference for force over diplomacy. The cumulative effect is a vacuum that China and Russia eagerly fill, expanding their influence as US engagement shrinks. Trump's second term opened on January 20, 2025 with a dramatic 90-day freeze on all foreign aid and the start of a full-scale dismantling of USAID. By late January, stop work orders were landing on current assistance awards with only a narrow humanitarian waiver left in place. Through February and March, the administration fought in court over halted payments. Supreme Court declined an urgent appeal but left the door open for restructuring. In March, the Secretary of State formally paused USAID operations and began a phased shutdown. By June, health groups were warning that millions of children were at risk and studies projected millions of additional deaths by 2030. On July 17th, the Senate backed bills slashing billions from foreign aid. On August 29th, Trump used a historic pocket rescission to cancel $5 billion, including $3.2 billion from development accounts. By September 13th, funding for PEPFAR was suspended, triggering fears of immediate harm. And on September 22nd, 23rd, Trump arrived at the United Nations General Assembly with the US already $3 billion behind on dues as the UN's 2026 budget was cut by 15%. Each step ratcheted up the pressure, culminating in a wholesale reshaping of US international aid and multilateral engagement.
It's too bad that I had to do these things instead of the United Nations doing them. And sadly, in all cases, the United Nations did not even try to help in any of them. I ended 7 wars, dealt with the leaders of each and every one of these countries, and never even received a phone call from the United Nations offering to help in finalizing the deal. All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. If the First Lady wasn't in great shape, she would have fallen. but she's in great shape. We're both in good shape. We both stood. And then a teleprompter that didn't work. These are the two things I got from the United Nations, a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter. Thank you very much. And by the way, it's working now. It just went on. Thank you. I think I should just do it the other way. It's easier. Thank you very much. I didn't think of it at the time because I was too busy working to save millions of lives.
Trump's defunding drive coincides with diplomatic isolation over Palestinian statehood. France, Belgium, the UK, Australia, and many others formally recognize Palestine.
Le temps est venu. C'est pourquoi, fidèle à l'engagement historique de mon pays au Proche-Orient, pour la paix entre le peuple israélien et le peuple palestinien, je déclare que la France reconnaît aujourd'hui l'État de Palestine. Et la reconnaissance des droits légitimes du peuple palestinien n'enlève rien aux droits du peuple israélien, que la France a soutenu dès le premier jour et au respect desquels elle n'est pas moins attachée. Précisément car nous sommes convaincus que cette reconnaissance est la solution qui seule permettra la paix pour Israël.
The US doubles down on Israel. Allies weigh whether to distance themselves or try to outflatter Trump. Meanwhile, the administration touts tariffs, border crackdowns, and ended wars as proof its approach works. At home, critics warn of lost influence. Abroad, leaders whisper about a post-American UN. Supporters frame the cuts as long overdue discipline for bloated globalist institutions. Opponents see a humanitarian disaster and a retreat from leadership that leaves room for authoritarian rivals. Both agree on one point: the world body has never faced a US president willing to risk losing its vote to prove a point. Whether this is leverage or lunacy may define not just Trump's legacy, but the future of multilateral governance. As Trump negotiates, one constant remains: funding as a bargaining chip. Cooperation, whether on peacekeeping, health, or post-war reconstruction, will depend on aligning with Washington. The UN must decide whether to reform under pressure, seek alternative financing, or drift into irrelevance. Nations from Europe to Africa to Asia must decide whether to stick with a cash-strapped UN or pivot to other platforms. In 2018, Trump was a punchline at the UN. In 2025, he is a power broker with the checkbook closed and a fistful of conditions. Billions withheld, programs gutted, allies pressured, adversaries tested. The mission is clear: make international bodies dance to America's tune or watch them starve. Whether this hard-edged America First crusade ends in leverage or in the hollowing out of global cooperation is now the question haunting every corridor of the United Nations. Thank you for watching Statecraft.